has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michelle Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Episode 304. But bacon, though. The Save Our Bacon Act, what's happening, and what you can do. Welcome back, my Veg Your Besties. It's Michelle. I think this might be a little bit of a shorter episode, but also a slightly denser episode than usual. And apologies, a little more America-centric than typically. But I was working on this information as part of an episode for a later date. And there is some urgency in the United States. Now, I think we all know that. There's some urgency in the United States for all of us. But I decided to get this episode out in advance of some legislation that is due to be discussed in the Senate in the United States in July. So this episode is going to be a little bit of a heads up on the issue, and also me, working out some other ideas I want to go into later in the year. But I hope you'll bear with me, and I hope you'll see something about it that's helpful. And honestly, that's the only reason I do this podcast. It's an effort to be helpful to some of us or all of us sometimes. So when there are inconvenient truths or bad news out there or work to be done, I hope it's a little tiny bit easier knowing that we aren't alone. We have each other. We have the opportunity and maybe even an obligation to create community. So the relatively urgent issue at hand is what's been called the Save Our Bacon Act. Honestly, I know. And I'm going to try to be clear and not too long-winded because I know you're probably multitasking. And if you want more information, I'm going to set you up with where you can find out more. But over the past decade, a handful of states, not as many as you'd hope, but a handful, have passed laws requiring more humane conditions for farm animals sold within their borders. Now, the most significant one is California. California's Proposition 12, which the voters in California passed in 2018 and then the Supreme Court upheld in 2023. Proposition 12 requires that pork sold in California come from pigs raised with at least 24 square feet of space per animal. So that legislation effectively banned gestation crates, those narrow metal cages that confine these huge pregnant sows so tightly that they can't even turn around for the duration of their pregnancies. States like Massachusetts also passed similar standards, and these laws worked because states have the constitutional right in the United States to set standards for products sold within their borders. And California happens to be the largest consumer market in the country. So if you want to sell pork in California, you got to follow California's rules. Now, I think we all know where this is going. The meat industry, I guess this goes without saying, the meat industry does not like this. And so they went to work on Congress. And the effort started as what was called the EATS Act, EATS, EATS Act Ending Agricultural Trade Suppression, pushed by members of Congress in both the House and in the Senate. And the core idea was to pass a federal law that would bar any state from setting production standards for agricultural products coming from other states. Now, if passed, it would have nullified Proposition 12 in California, nullified the Massachusetts law, and preemptively blocked any other state from ever passing similar protections. Ever. So that's kind of amazing, right? The EATS Act didn't pass on its own. So similar language has been folded into the 2026 House Farm Bill under a new name called the Save Our Bacon Act. The House passed that farm bill in May of this year. The vote was 224 to 200, if my notes are correct. And now it goes to the United States Senate to be discussed. So the Save Our Bacon Act is essentially a rider in the middle of a $1.4 trillion bill, which is one reason contacting senators matter. Most people have no idea that it's in there, including the senators who are going to be voting on it. It's just a small little section in there. And if this provision becomes law, the consequences are big. As I understand it, every state animal welfare standard for farm products, current and future, is wiped out. There is no floor, no basic, no standards. Industrial producers who have been operating under what we would consider the worst possible conditions would be legally protected from any state level accountability. But the piece of the story I want to make sure we spend time on, because I think it's the one that's most likely to reach people who don't yet consider themselves part of this movement, part of our community. Many farmers, not just factory farms, but many smaller, more conscientious operations, as well as some law-abiding larger farms, made real investment in good faith to comply with California's standards. Many farms and food lots redesigned housing. They rebuilt barns. They absorbed significant costs because they believed the market was moving towards a demand for higher welfare standards, and they wanted to be on the right side of that shift. Some of them have documented genuine improvements, too. Healthier animals, better outcomes, some real business benefits from doing things differently. And, if I had a penny, if I had a penny for everyone who tells me that they only buy meat raised to the highest standards of care, honestly, I'd be able to fund a lot of initiatives. But anyway, snark aside, if the Save Our Bacon Act becomes law, those investments are stranded overnight. Every dollar that those farms and farmers, every dollar they spent to do the right thing becomes essentially a competitive disadvantage, because the producers who refuse to change, who kept their gestation crates in their crowded conditions, they're ultimately rewarded. And the farmers who tried to do better and to comply get punished. And consumers, okay, maybe many of the listeners to this podcast are not consumers of pork, but consumers lose something too, the ability to trust that what they're buying reflects what they think it reflects. And there goes your ability to make an informed choice. Now, of course, inflation is hitting people very, very hard. And you might think that undoing these standards is going to make pork products cheaper for Americans. Maybe it will. But what it will undoubtedly do is make the biggest players in the industrial agriculture universe more profitable. And beyond the price question, this part of the Farm Bill sets what I think we can instantly see as a troubling precedent. It's the federal government stepping in to override states in ways that go against what their own constituents voted for. And it makes it much harder for farms that are genuinely trying to do better for their animals and for their employees. It makes it much harder for those enterprises to compete. It makes it very, very hard to ever move in a kinder direction again. Now, most of the people you know and love who still eat meat will be concerned about that, I think, once they know this story. This is not just an animal welfare story. It's a story about whether we have a food system that rewards honesty and good faith, and whether the federal government should be able to take that choice away from voters who made it at the state level. Now, there is a small sign of hope worth noting. United States Senator from Kansas, Roger Marshall, was an original champion, supporter, maybe even wrote this legislation. I can't quite remember it. But he withdrew his support in June of this year. Now, that doesn't happen unless there's a certain amount of genuine political pressure being felt. And the United States Senate Agriculture Committee has also shown some resistance to the preemption provision of the bill as well. So this is not all done. And I think issues of states' rights, issues of local enforcement of standards are important to a lot of people. I want to close by being specific and helpful because I know you're busy. I know you're walking or doing your chores. I want to close by being a little specific about what we could actually do in this situation because, me being vague and just getting you riled up is not, it's not very helpful. I want you to be able to put your energy somewhere more concrete. So in the next week or two, the Save Our Bacon Act will be in the Senate being discussed. So contact your United States senators. Ask them to oppose the preemption provision in the Farm Bill, the Save Our Bacon Act. And you can find action alerts and contact tools through Humane World for Animals at humaneworld.org, through the ASPCA, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and through the Animal Legal Defense Fund. These are all organizations that have done the work of making it very, very simple for us to reach out to our legislators, and it takes about 5 minutes, maybe 10, if you start reading about it, and I think you'll be interested. And especially if you are in a United States location, a state with senators on the Agriculture Committee, your contact matters even more, I think. Those states are, there's a bunch of them: Arkansas, Mississippi, Iowa. I've got the list. Arkansas, Mississippi, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Alabama, South Dakota, North Dakota, West Virginia, Nebraska, Minnesota, New Jersey, Illinois, California, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Colorado, New Mexico, Georgia, and Vermont. So if you're in one of those states, please reach out to your senator who is on the Agriculture Committee. And if you know people, small business owners, farmers, people who care about states' rights, who might not be coming at this from the same exact angle as maybe you or I, they may not be coming from the animal welfare angle, but they would still be troubled by federal preemption of state standards. Share this story with them or send them the link at one of those organizations that I just read out to you. The coalition that can stop this bill is much larger than our community, much larger than the vegan community. There are a lot of people who are going to care. Now, always remember what is in our control, because so much is not, and it really can deplete our energy when we keep reading all the things that are just wrong going on in the world. But we can think about where we spend our money, because money is definitely a policy vote that happens every single day. The restaurant that has invested in a thoughtful plant-based menu deserves your business and mine. It deserves our appreciation. A grocery store that stocks high welfare products deserves to know why you're buying them or what you're worried about them if they're disappearing. Your local farmer's market probably has vendors who've transitioned to pasture-raised, pasture-based practices, and let's get them focused on this too. None of it requires perfection. Nobody has to be exactly on the same page. But this is kind of an important issue, I think, for many of us. And the idea that it limits or dismisses the possibility of things changing in the future should be particularly worrisome. Okay, this episode was indeed aimed at my U.S. listeners and voters, but thank you, the rest of the world, for sticking with us. Maybe you zoned out a little bit, but come back to me because I do want to say a word to everyone else. This is not an exclusively American problem. I mean, there are some problems in America that are exclusively American, but they dribble over into the rest of the world. And my UK listeners, the threat looks different, but it's similar, right? The UK-US trade deal signed in 2025. That opened the door to tens of thousands of tons of American beef produced under welfare standards that would be normally illegal in Britain. So farmers there who invested in higher standards face very similar problems, being undercut by cheaper imports that just didn't play by the same rules. And in Europe, the EU's, I think they call it the farm to fork strategy, farm to fork, that promised to phase out cage farming across the member states in the EU. And those commitments have been, basically shelved, basically dropped out of the 2026 Commission work program after years of delays. And in Canada, I have a lot of Canadian listeners, and I love each and every one of you. A national conversation in Canada about stronger federal animal welfare standards is just getting started. So different specifics, but the same basic story. So if you're in any of those places and you know someone doing important work on these issues, whether it's an advocate or a farmer or a policy wonk or a lawyer, or anyone who would make just a great guest on this podcast, please reach out to me. I would love to bring on those voices. And in the links for the show, we'll have more information. But you could start at humaneworld.org to find out more. And then, please, let your senators know what you think. And some of us may have forgotten who our senators are. I know a lot of people have been turned off the news and are discouraged by a lot of things going on right now, but there's something you can do this summer, and that is to reach out to your senators and ask them to not support this provision in the Farm Bill, Save Our Bacon Act. So I know summer always is kind of a bait and switch. We kind of wait for summer and we think we're going to have time for things. We're going to have there's going to be more hours in the day. And yeah, there are usually more hours of daylight, but it fills up with all kinds of things. I know it does. And same here when it comes to the busyness of summer. But I do think this particular issue is one worth investing 5 minutes, maybe 10 from your life and from maybe discussing it with your friends or your colleagues before July, before it's too late. And next week, we're going to get towards something that I had planned to talk about, and I hope it's a little bit more hopeful because there's research out of Harvard in the last few years that suggests it might require far fewer people to get genuinely on board than most of us think, so that we can see some real momentum and change in some of these issues that we care so much about. And I can't wait to share that with you and discuss it with you and get your feedback on it. And thank you, all of you, so much for bearing with me. I know this was a bit of a drier episode, and I also know these ideas are important. These questions are important, and you may have not been following this in the news, and I didn't want it to go past before you had an opportunity to do something about it. So this is a real opportunity for you and for me, and just another way you can veg your best. Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe leave us a 5-star review or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.